But that's part of the program, I'm assuming, right?
It's
here.
well, I'm going to let you, I can remove it.
Well, it's 8:30.
Okay, the worst part is that it's not.
Take it up after. There we go. There's a whole discussion.
Who knows?
Yes.
Any public comments, correspondence, and communications? I'll have, he was texting me and he said it's gonna be like 15 minutes late, so we can keep moving along and we can be here when he gets it.
Sounds good.
I'm looking for the approval of minutes for the April 3rd meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor Jones,
Second.
second by Supervisor Matera.
Okay, one moment. Okay,
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. University Extension, Miguel, I guess you want to take a seat there? Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Um, so I started my position as a bilingual dairy educator last October. And I work for this county as much as for Sheboygan, Dodge and Fond du Lac counties. And well, I'm gonna give you guys a review of what I've been working on. So in extension, the first thing we do is to conduct a needs assessment, and this is getting to connect with the people that we work with. So I've been going through connecting with farmers, but also with nutritionists, professors in the academia, veterinarians and other groups, to try to see what are the needs that the farmers have, and to do program on it. We're supposed to do that for 3 to 6 months. So that's pretty much what I've been focused on. And the main problems or challenges we have found are related to safety and good practices, also communication, and then after that, some others like calving, but also public perception, things like that. Some of them we can work on like straight, other ones we can just help so much. Through this pathway of connecting to people, I've been meeting with a lot of people from the private sectors, which is amazing because they help us support programming and do whatever the farmers want us to do. So it's a good way of cooperation with them. I'm assuming you guys have this file there. So I list some of them that you can visit. One that is not in there that I think is very important is a person from Cargill, which is a company that works in this area. Well, it works in the whole country and globally too, but I connected with Crystal Prom, which is the person in charge of this area. And I think is very good connection to working cooperation for the future, since they have a lot of experience with the people here. Is a good way for me to get to the farmers that I cannot reach through other organizations. Or I have done well, I guess it's not normal for extension educators to do programming in the first 6 months. But since I knew some people that works in extension, and they knew a couple of problems, and then also I received one of my counties from another educator that was active in there. After some needs assessment, I was able to do a calving management practices workshop, and also a feeder school training. This second one was with the support of the nutrition team in extension, and I had participation from farms here in Ozaukee County. So that's amazing. Just last week, I went to one of the farms here, Paulus Dairy Farm, ahead of Lori, I cannot remember her last name. But so she invited me to get to know her farm because she sent some of her workers to one of my programming events, and then well, she liked them. She wanted me to come around. I thought that was nice that they wanted me to see the operation, to probably help in whatever else they need. And I think it's also like they helped me a lot to understand the farming practices that are specific for this area. And then I have also worked in cooperation with other educators to release this bilingual newsletter. Extension used to have one bilingual newsletter that was very well used for farmers, and then after having some issues with the translation of it, the educators used to do it in English, and then the people of the institution translating it had some issues that could not keep on doing it. So we brought it back with a different name and like different goals, more related to assist the workers of the farms. And we have it there. We have one issue. We're gonna be doing it bi-monthly for now until it grabs some traction, and then probably once a month. And after that, I've also been doing a couple other well, I have been supporting other groups. I work directly with the group of nutrition, but I also work with the welfare, animal welfare group, and technology, the technology group, the one related to talk about all these automatic milking systems and all those. Since one hot topic is the avian flu, but since there's no cases in cattle yet, there's not so much for us to worry about. There's plenty of material from the extension group in the website. So I just wanted to mention that. Probably that's it for now. If you guys have any questions, comments.
Very aggressive manual for right out of the gate, so I have no questions. Thank you for.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Okay. All right, anything else you guys want to? With extensions, if not, let's move on to registered deeds, land information.
Seeing none.
In there, yeah.
Real estate sales are high today.
I know that.
Grafton?
I know that they have been receiving additional birth certificate and marriage certificate requests due to the real ID the requirements. It's probably doubled in the last past on request. The DMV sends them directly to us.
That's a good income for me.
It is a good revenue right now, yes.
Yeah,
And passports also.
I heard about it 10 years ago and got mine.
Yes, I had. Yeah.
It has a star on it.
So,
Then, yeah, good question. Okay, all right, I'm gonna move on to land, you want to manage. Meeting, sir.
Bingo. Let me feel that.
Yeah, this session, I wouldn't agree on it, but we can find the frameworks and we want to.
Good morning, everyone. We had Mike and Matt at the county boards to give a really broad overview, but we have a little more details for you today, so. So you guys all know the group. Overall, the members themselves haven't changed too much. We've gone through 2 presidents now. We've gained members, so now we have a 10-member board. But the Milwaukee River Watershed Clean Farm Family is a group by them. They are volunteers. They don't get paid for what they do. They host events. They have the ideas. They plant. They post. It's really run by them. And I can't thank them enough. And since 2016, I'm just really proud to have worked with them since 2016, maybe not in this capacity, but it's great to see how much they've grown. So that's what we're here today to talk about.
That's interesting, we've only been around for 9 years.
Right. 2016, they came about. This was Andy's dream. He made it happen. 2019 was the bigger year where they established the research plot. Through grants, they purchased the interseeder and crimper, and at that time, the tractor was leased. A year later, Demet Farm Group was formed, so now not only do we have one producer-led, farmer-led group, now we've got two. One with different funding, different projects, different goals. So really, the soil health initiative in the county is run by two farmer groups, aided by Ozaki County. Further aided was the purchase of the tractor for the interseeder and crimper use. It's since then been decided the tractor sits on the interseeder because the interseeder is a heavy, large piece of equipment. It was better use to keep it on the tractor than unhooking all the time. 22 was really a big year for organization, growth of the group, growth of the county, really. We had another grazing group or another farmer-led group formed called the Grazing Farm Families, which is just a subset of the Clean Farm Families, but it has a different target audience. So those smaller hobby farmers or those horse boarding facilities, anyone grazing. We had learned through the years of this group that some of those farmers didn't feel like they belonged at the table with the dairy, with the grain, because they didn't dairy or grain. So we opened the group up to that. Bare Ground Initiative was also opened up to another target audience of basically anyone with land. If you owned 5 acres or more, if you wanted to plant a pollinator, if you wanted to do anything, maybe rent your ground out to a farmer, but didn't know how to begin. This was a way that we opened the door to those people as well. On the county behalf, that was when the soil health conservation planner position came about. That role was huge in organizing the financial data, the results of the plot. Really just data management started to take off at that point. Also that fall, Andy had planned to purchase the air seeder, so we acquired it that fall. In 23, the Clean Farm Families grants exceeded $100,000, which hadn't been done in the past.
So was that year you got 100,000?
Yep. I think this year I have in my notes here that I think we're over 100. We might be at 103, not including any donations. So that's what their budget looks like for this year. In 24, we kind of maybe took a step back and looked at what we have done so far. What was working, what wasn't. I looked at the research plot. Since 2019 to this year, what has the plot given us? What have we shown the public? What have we earned in yield, revenue? And we really weren't coming up with something that was something I wanted to advertise. The soil health was there, but I couldn't make money at the plot. What was the problem? We were relying on volunteer work. If you rely on volunteer work, volunteer farmers who have to plant 2,000 acres of their own stuff, when are they going to get our 35? So now we've hired that, we've contracted that out. We expanded our partnership with Washington County for horse management. So another target audience, but we didn't have to create another group. We just collaborated with another county who also has a high target audience of horse farms or horse boarding facilities. On the county side, I'll just pay note to Sarah with increased data collection with the conservation survey. So in 22, we had all this back data that we kind of compiled. Sarah has now organized it and put it a step further and collected more data. So I'll let her chat about that when we get to that point. Morning, Bruce.
Your GPS was right on.
So conservation outcomes over the years, what have we done? I know I just show you 22, 23, 24 here, but that's really when we started to actually look at this data and have partners that could calculate this data for us. So the top 3 educational events, incentivized acres and non-incentivized acres are counted by us in the office. So how many events are we hosting? With the help of Sarah, we also do surveys. So what are the thoughts on those events? How many people? We track all the metrics there. Collect email, phone number, surveys of anyone who is interested in that time for us to contact them. So that has gone up over time. I will say that we're gonna probably keep it at that 10 to 13 level. Because at some point you start losing attendance and you start losing the pizzazz. So we're gonna focus on quality of events, not so much quantity.
Can I ask, just looking at this really quick,
Mhm.
the difference between incentivized acres and non-incentivized acres, like. But, how did we lose a couple acres, but then also, and then I just remember this, if that's a typo. So it was 5,000, and then 20,000, like
Yes.
where'd that?
It is not a typo.
Where'd that 15,000 differential come from?
Yes. The incentivized acres, I'm not surprised, are kind of running steady because we only have a set amount of dollars, right? So right now, the group has approved their farmer incentives to cap at 2,000. So each year you get about 40 to 50, maybe 60 people incentivized practices. So that acre amount is going to be somewhat similar.
Okay.
The reason we have a jump in 24 for the non-incentivized acres is because of that conservation survey. We are now requiring of those farmers who get the incentive. So we say, I'll pay you or I'll help you get into no-till or cover crop for this incentive. You need to tell me what you do on your other acres. Hence the huge growth there.
So you're telling me that 24 is the more accurate number. And the others were kind of just like,
Yes.
I'll just throw a number in here and.
So in 22, 23, for example. Farmer A he does 300 acres of low disturbance manure application, but I can only pay him up to $2,000. So that equates to like 120 acres only. So at that time, I knew he was doing 300, I think that's what he said. But I could only pay for 120, so I only knew that difference. Sarah has now included a survey to get the whole farm operation.
Got it. Got
Yeah.
it. Sorry, it was just such a.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
you-
good.
You were talking about quantity over, or quality over quantity for the meetings and stuff like
Yes.
that. We had talked that these soil health ones were, they had the free ones and then there were the ones that they're charging. It was almost redundant. Are you cutting back on the ones that are being charged?
That one in particular we're talking about was the Soil Health Academy. It was quite costly with very famous speakers. That is a one-time event at this time. Unless the Clean Farm families want to get together and offer their grant money towards it. It's not something that I want to pursue at this time. We'll focus on. And actually what we've been hearing, farmers want local people. They want to know what you're doing down south that works for you, because you're in southeast Wisconsin.
Sure.
Even as far as Door, Kewanee, there are a lot of capos up there, and we have a lot of capos too, so. They've expressed interest in learning from others near us.
That
Not
makes more
getting
sense.
people
Makes
from
sense.
Indiana, Minnesota, that sort of thing. For the most part, most of our events are free for people to attend. That was the times that we did go. Yeah.
Yeah, but the attendance wasn't very good for that.
Our attendance failed, that's why we had to cancel our 2 days. Yeah, 7 was not enough for us to keep the rental hall food. We had to cancel. But the bottom 3 metrics, water quality, sediment loss, and climate, the CO2 emission reduction. Those numbers are thankfully calculated by our producer-led program. So one of the big funders, the Clean Farm Families, gets their grants through. Their requirement, we'll give you this money if you give us your reporting back. So what good practices have you done? We send that off to the state. They enter our data into their models. They send us back this information. And again.
So I recognize this is just about Clean Farm Families impact, correct? So
Correct.
it's not the entire county,
Correct.
doesn't look at that. Of course, those are interesting and useful and arguably more relevant numbers, right? So how do these compare with
Yeah.
the rest of the county?
For the rest of the county, the number of practices that we do outside of these numbers are your grass waterways that Jeff and Chase design, manure abandonments, manure constructions, manure pits. They probably do maybe 5 to 10, maybe 12 a year. And those are all varied projects. So I would say the number of acres touched with a soil health practice is greater through this group. Your grass waterway is only maybe 500 foot by 50 foot.
Right, so
Yeah.
if I understand you correctly, you're talking about county programs that work on the rest of the county
Yes,
farms. I guess I'm interested in the idea of how are we doing in all of these metric areas across the rest of the county who are not enrolled in Clean Farms Family? Because, right, I mean, the intent of Clean Farms Families, and I understand it was to kind of develop the practices in the area outside that Clean Farm only group, right? So an interesting metric, maybe a really important metric would be these numbers compared to the rest of the county.
well, that was our goal with the conservation survey, so that 20,000 acres, like. Manny mentioned Mike Paulus farm, he has 3,000 acres. Now his acres are included in that, which takes up a very large portion of the farmable area to the north. So we are slowly getting to that point.
Right, and just to make, maybe I'm not making myself clear, or maybe I'm not understanding what you're saying, so. Whether they're incentivized or not incentivized in this metric, it's addressing only clean farm family farms, correct?
So we would somehow need to be able to get surveys out to the rest of the public that's not getting incentivized, I feel like, to be able to get.
And that's
those.
included in this?
That is not included,
Okay,
There's plenty of them doing no-till practices. like-
correct?
right, and I guess that's of some interest, at least to me.
Okay.
Of how we're doing it, expanding these practices countywide.
My one question is. You have all these programs, but it seems the incentive is not for contour strips anymore, which is a big part of holding soil. Back in the '60s, that's basically they set it all up, and we seem to be losing that due to CAFOs and large fields and so on and so forth. Why aren't we incentives? Putting incentives.
I guess that's a good question. That's a question I can pose to you guys too.
Because the state. Soil at the Farm Bureau Convention 2 years ago, basically that farm was all contour strips. That one, you know, that, and it's a beautiful farm, the smallest field was 3 acres.
Mhm.
And you know, we aren't promoting that. And I feel we're losing our soil just because of that.
Although Ozaki does not have an initiative for contour strips right now, NRCS does.
Yeah.
So that has always been like an EQIP or a NRCS practice where you could get contour strips cost shared.
Right, but we're not
I think the
promoting it at
closest
least.
thing we get to is maybe a buffer strip.
Right,
And the reason being, I don't know. It was never an initiative that anyone from Land and Water brought up. A lot of times we refer back to the farmers. What do you want to see? What are you working towards? Would a contour strip benefit you? We have not heard that.
everything at farm is contour.
I'd like to discuss that with you further.
That's what I was just gonna propose. I don't know.
Yeah.
anything. Can you explain what kind of strip that?
Basically, you're altering crops. Some that would winter over. And so basically your bare ground is padded from that, but when the water runs through, you're already. Have strips that are just slow it down on its way.
So it's at the same contour, so 563 feet, more or less going across, it's grass or some of the crop.
Yeah.
And so the water would flow down through that. And that.
Or you might have sections with no till in amongst it. You know, the other plowed ground or ripped ground and just to alter the movement. But what we're seeing in Ozaki County is everybody's pulling everybody's fence lines out. And we're getting larger tracts of land where there once was. Strips or smaller fields that did slow water down, and we're losing that.
It's slowing the water down in the road too.
Yeah, in my co-op experience, Ozaki County never really had a lot of, in my farmers that I've worked with, I did not work with a lot of contour strips in Ozaki. Sheboygan, Dodge, Fond du Lac, slopey areas had a lot where you saw the contour follow the slope it's a breakup in crop, like you said, slow down water.
It just
Yeah.
seems like that's what we should be promoting also.
Okay. In addition to that, NRCS does have, they recognize that field borders were being taken out, so they do have cost share for what they call a windbreak or still a filter strip, a buffer strip. So although we don't have an initiative, it's not an incentivized practice right now through Clean Farm Families or the county. NRCS does offer it.
But farmers can still do what they want, but I'm not participating, because I have that in my neighborhood where the fence lines are going out for bigger field, bigger equipment and everything like that. And some of those are not people that are participating in this.
Sure.
And I see a lot of ground in the ditches, on the snow and all that, because it just blows across. There's
Yep.
no more.
Yep.
Nothing to stop it.
One thing I'll add to that too with NRCS, at least with the buffer strip, which is water related to a contour strip, right? They give more points if it's directly adjacent to a water body. So they want to see your farm field, no-till, plowed, however, you do get more points if it is plowed. Buffer strip, water. So they want to separate with the buffer strip.
I think this is, triggered a really important discussion or thought, this idea of the metrics. And if these are the goals for our farmland best practices, I mean, from a community perspective, I mean, best practices to a farmer might be what maximizes my yield or maximizes my return or whatever. From a county perspective, we're interested in keeping phosphorus out of our water, keeping the sediment in place, soil in place, CO2 emissions. So those are the top goals from a public policy perspective. It would be a big project, but really helpful to take all of the practices that contribute to that, whether it's NRCS, whether it's incentivized state practices or other that we're just not aware of, maybe Kirkland might be better aware of, and roll that all into how are we doing across the county to come up with that more holistic view of how we're doing as a county. Across all of the programs that are important from a public policy perspective.
Yep.
Does that make sense? I mean,
It does, but I'll
it's a
first
big
of all, give
project.
Sarah, it is a huge project. When I came in 22, I at least took the data, put it together for somewhat usable. Sarah takes it, organizes it more, and then expands it. So I'll say what we've done so far is nothing short of a little miracle. But we will work towards that.
Well, miracle or not, it's an important discussion, and you've positioned us through this work to have this discussion. So thank you for that.
How do we reach those that won't participate or aren't?
Well, my first start would be those NMPs. So not everyone in the county with a nutrient management plan gets farmer incentivized payments through the Clean Farm Family Group. I know from my previous experience, the tolerable soil loss and a little bit of the phosphorus reduction metrics are measured with a program called SNAP Plus, that was my sole job. So I did that for 8 years. We get those plans every year. We are tasked with reviewing those plans, sending that data off to the state. So what we'll have to work into our schedule to at least get a start to what you're referring to would be to look at every one of those programs, one of those plans, pull the data out that we need and start compiling it. I see a lot of time in that, but it could be, we'll have to work out a plan for it.
Then we'll have something to add.
Well,
Then we'll have something to add.
yeah, I didn't like this in the point you were mentioning, like whenever a farm, like you were mentioning, the goals of the farmer can be way different than the goals can be from the economic perspective. So how do us phrase that challenge like what would you guys advise? And this is coming out of my ignorance, how to deal with those.
I think that's a great question, right? And from my perspective, some of it is incentives, some of it is sharing information that is that helps meet both goals, the public policy goals as well as the farmer goals. And understanding what those farmer goals are first, I guess, and trying to figure out where there's overlap. And then in that area of overlap, how do you incentivize that by sharing information, by providing incentives by, maybe that's it, that's all I can come up with off the top of my head. But I think you have to start with the end in mind. What do we want to accomplish from a public policy perspective? And from a farmer's perspective, what do they want to accomplish? Trying to figure out where this.
And
Well, I mean,
our
I would, yeah, I would echo that, like, that's the value of, I mean, Kurt on this board. His family shared with me yesterday that his value was 1800s. Was the 1800s, his family's been farming his land. And to have the voice that he has that carries a lot of weight, at least for me, in this committee. So, I mean, just bringing up what he was just talking about there, I think you two should definitely collaborate, because I'm very supportive of these initiatives, but I'd have to use the word use ignorance and to the big scheme of things, but I definitely want to see it.
we are trying to host a field
Yeah.
day
So,
with Kurt's.
One other
Blessing.
area is we could make it easier for the farmer, right? So we've done that by having equipment, by buying equipment, leasing it out and whatever. So there are opportunities, but unless you try to, again, start with that end in mind, know what you want to accomplish. And you don't necessarily get to the point of how do we do it most efficiently? Are we doing it effectively?
Or, I'm assuming there's some kind of, some things that are both sides of the in the building of.
Yeah, I wouldn't even necessarily say give up, I'd be looking for that win-win, I think there's an opportunity, so the farmer wants to make has a livelihood to make efforts. And so, yeah, how do we help them be more effective at that? A metric missing here might be dollars per acre, that is earned out of, practices versus soil health practices, things that speak for the farmers' concerns. A little bit too deep, I think
Yeah.
we've probably gotten to that point of.
You had mentioned something easy and quick to get to data is that NDTI survey. So Chase presented on that, the colors of the county trending from orange, yellow to green.
Right.
That's countywide. So that includes this. Yes, there are no numbers. You don't see 1,000 pounds reduction in that green color, but it shows progression.
Yeah.
Just another model.
So basically, why the group their Clean Family Farms doesn't seem like countywide, just because when they initially started, it was only in a segment of the river shed and the lake shed, so it was segmented out that these programs were not offered to people outside that group, so a lot of them didn't look at it. They paid attention, but they just didn't look at it.
Yes, funds were at one point in time only tied to the Milwaukee River watershed. We have since expanded that to the whole county. So that is why we did the grazing farm families, the horse management. That's why we were able to broaden our target audience. So. Conservation practice trends. You'll see the spike in 24, obviously, because we're collecting more data. So that's really the only incorrect-ish outlier you'll see here. But if you just look at 21, 22, 23, you see the bad years. The cold, wet years, low disturbance manure is always up and rising because if you have a guy with a low disturbance rig on one field, you're going to do it on the rest of them. So that one's always going to be rather high. Cover crops and no-till are all part of the crop rotation. If you grow corn 3 years in a row and put it in hay, you're not going to see that. And on incentivized acres is what this is, and the survey, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So, yeah, these are like she kind of mentioned, the most common incentivized practices. They're consistently the top performer practices year after year. Just in 24, 98% of the practices that we offer are in just these ones, just for perspective of what people are doing out there in the field. And then, yeah, as she mentioned, we had really good discussion just on the last slide about all of this, but I just had a note here that it's still not all encompassing because it's just the people that are getting incentivized that we're getting the surveys for. So yes, we need to figure out how to get this information from other farmers who are not just getting incentivized. So that's definitely something I've been thinking about, so. So thanks to the county board for their support and help in getting this equipment. Just wanted to show some of the data that has come with purchasing these. So in case you're curious, I was just looking at some of the common practices that we've used the no-till drill for as of late. Last year, sunflowers were really popular. Otherwise, typically small grain, you get a lot of winter rye in the fall. Cover crops. We've actually had quite a bit of interest too in pollinator areas, same thing. In pollinator areas. So that's been exciting to see. For the crimper, we usually have for sure one person that uses it consistently for pumpkins. They really like using that because one, for weed management, and two, it keeps their pumpkins clean, just because it helps keep the soil in place. So that's a big use for sprinter. Air seeder, what's been really popular lately, gaining a lot of traction is frost seeding clover into winter wheat. And the air seeder is really nice because it can cover a lot of ground in much time than using the drill. So that's been a popular use for the air seeder lately. You'll notice that 24, our numbers are down from the last few years. It was a tough year last year for a lot of farmers with the wet, with all the rain. So I don't know if that has to do with it, or, you know, we are getting more people involved in these practices, so maybe they're just getting their own equipment and not needing to rent it from us. So we'll see, I guess, as the years go on, if it just was a poor year that people weren't needing it, or if that does trend down.
That's an interesting thing, is like saying that, like, buying your own equipment, is there any way to like, cause you look at these numbers and it's what's striking. Maybe there's less participation, but the opposite.
Yeah, I don't know really how to portray that in a table for you, but the air seeder, that is the case. The 652 in 23 came from majority one farm. That one farm purchased their own seeder. So then there went, well, he was 700 acres in 22 also. So there went one renter. The clover this winter that was air seeded, they had the co-op do it. So we found with the air seeder, a farmer uses it once, then they know, okay, this is a 60-foot boom, but I got to do it. My time's included. I got to have you come out to mix it. This is all a lot of time and my tractor. I think once they found out all that was involved, but they liked the product or they liked the work, they either bought their own machine or they had the co-op do it for a little bit more cost.
Yeah, so this next slide, Katie and I thought it would be important to show you just kind of the numbers over the years of the use of the equipment. Let's see, there's a big increase in 2022. So we made note that we did increase the rental rate and then introduce the air seeder. So that was a big part in why there was such a big increase that year. Same thing for expenses. We did end up needing to purchase new tires for the tractor, which was pretty costly as well. So that was the reason for the increase for that year. Did want to make note too, though, even though we are having a decrease in use of rental equipment, it's still not a problem. We still are seeing a profit in renting out this equipment.
These expenses do cover the cost of the tractor driver as well. And that those gentlemen are paid $22 an hour.
And then
Is there a life with these products? I'm sure there is, but so we're maintaining operating costs.
Yes.
Rental fees. But
yes.
Depreciation and replacement is probably not included in these.
Those numbers are not. Winter maintenance at best is included in those expenses, so we have contracted with the highway department to do that winter work for us, so he does the greasing, the bearings, the maintenance. Maintenance up till that point was not done. So now we've added that.
It's just something to put in the back of your mind that, you know, at some point, if you want to sell this, right, as usage goes down and maybe others farmers want to buy their own. We maybe have to recoup some of that initial investment without impacting negatively impact on the intent of the program.
In that sense, tractor and drill are probably, well, that and the air seeder, since the air seeder is more new. Those are in the best working condition. Our crimper is a little old. It's gone across a few fields with rocks, so they're not straight chevrons anymore. They're maybe even a little dull, so we might have to do a little maintenance to sharpen them up again. Not to the point where they cut, but where they actually crimp. But that piece of equipment was, I'd have to look back at the exact receipt, but I think that was only $6,000 in itself. So knowing what that's worth and what it might cost to fix up. And for the fact that we only have one user, we've actually already mentioned in the future that if he is interested in buying, let me know.
And then kind of another major component for the Cleans Barn families, of course, is outreach and education. Kind of as Katie mentioned already, we've over the years have tried to increase the number of events, but it's kind of maybe led to burnout. Not only for the farmers that are helping us with this, but the people that are coming to see these events, you know, maybe it's something they've already seen, so they're not as interested anymore. We also have been doing this for almost 10 years. And it's been interesting going to different events and talking with some of the other producer-led groups that have been around as long as our group, that they also kind of see the same decline over time. So just trying to figure out ways to get new people involved, kind of like what we're talking about. I think we've really reached a lot of the people that really want to do this kind of work. So now it's trying to figure out how to get these people that are kind of, as they call, like middle to late adopters. How do we reach this new target audience? So there's just been a lot of discussion about, do we, change location, try to go closer or to different areas of the county? Do we just really need to change up the type of topics that we're showing? So just having some discussions about that. But of course, always still really important to have these events. So we still plan to host, like Katie said, around 10 to no more than 13 probably. So that's been important. Every year we do just a health workshop. So usually bring in a larger speaker from out of the state. But again, as Katie also mentioned too, our farmers are interested in local people. So now we've been trying to bring in kind of an outside speaker, but also maybe someone local to try to gauge interest from both groups. And so that's what's been really helpful about having these surveys too at these events, is getting people's feedback. So we know how to gear these, try to get more people to come to them, what they're interested in, what they want to see more of. And then other things like pasture walks, pop-up field days, pollinator events, cover crop field days, things like that. So. And then finally, just some key takeaways, which we've kind of mentioned as we went, but I'll just summarize them quickly. We had the spike in the conservation practices in 24, which we had extensive discussion about, just because of that survey and how we can reach more people for that, to see more realistically what's going on throughout the entire county. Decline in rental equipment usage, kind of trying to figure out what's happening with that, see if it's a trend that's going to keep happening or if it was just kind of a down year. And then the increase in events over time caused exhaustion, but trying to figure out how to keep getting momentum going throughout the community, getting people engaged in coming to our events. So
as part of that, like big project you talked about earlier, and it's incremental, just take the bite so that as you can. But to the point of where's the overlap between farmers and public policy, I channel Kurt in this, is they have to make a profit, right? Farmers have to make a profit. And you know, a comparison of profit a bit at the Ozaukee County level, because Kurt also says Ozaukee County is different than a lot of counties that some of the speakers come in from, or you know, practices done in non-clay heavy soils, for example. I don't know enough to really say it, but the idea of what's the profitability of the no-till practices, the conservation practices that we want to push from a public policy perspective versus the money that a farmer needs to make from that land. You know, I think therein lies the biggest challenge we have in advancing the public policy. So understanding that difference and then how to address that difference is
That's the
it's the way we push it forward, is the way we achieve policy for public policy goals, and you know, we get farmers who are engaged because it brings in more profitability.
Right.
I think that's why Katie's contracting out under test farm, you know, to see if that's gonna improve the situation over there, because up to this point, it really hasn't shown much, right?
Correct. So predecessor, way up here with soil health practices, right? I think I'm a little more realistic. I see what the farmers are earning on these practices. I see what our plot is earning on these practices, and it's not cutting it. So why? So now with that, we have research out there with pests. We have the contracted work to do the work timely. If you don't get it planted timely, each day that goes by that corn's not in the ground, you're losing growing degree units. We're just paying more attention to the details.
And our manager for the demonstration farm network is also helping us a lot now with the plot, and I think that'll be really helpful because he's very knowledgeable as well. So.
Yes, the farmers on the outside of those practices look at it and say, they're not sharing their profitability numbers. And so therefore they are either very low, or I just don't trust that I can make a profit at it. I mean, that's part of how do we build that bridge.
That's where we have been since we started the plot. We were at a break even for both. Yeah, so we'll start with the contracted work, get things done timely. As much as we rely on those volunteers for the work already, something had to be done and some money needed to be tossed at it to do things correctly. So otherwise, if you have any other questions, that's the Clean Farm family so far. Okay.
Thank you.
Sarah.
I've got, management financial information report. Anything else, Katie?
Yeah, just to go through our,
I'll just interject real quick to my clerk and extension, all that came at 9 o'clock, but we had asked them, I think they got some of you, just really kind of this.
When you were wherever we started to be 30 million.
Yeah.
That's what I just said. I was in weird either.
For the summer.
Yeah, that's it.
I haven't been there.
Summer, good.
Cram too much in there.
Cindy, did you have anything else to add to that? Do you have anything else to add? Real quick, we actually went through, very part to Jeff, and he mentioned that there was, uptick in, first and stuff, because of the.
Yes, it was yesterday, was our license traveling. So we've had over the last month, we definitely started in better requests and it's like compliance here. And then we have some tools like generation. I mean, that's been going on for the last like 7 years. We're raising a lot of people.
you just give me
Questioning by the way.
We have some.
So we're still seeing a lot of night as soon as the weather gets nicer, we have.
Piece of president, get you. I'm sorry.
Yes.
What next?
And then the only other thing we didn't really have was that information from
Sure. I need another thing in that closet.
Policy of the federal.
It's year round, they've been doing this for lots of years. We see the tech, we see a few different ones, but both of them. Yeah.
But someone was Australian and he's just applied for dual citizenship because he didn't want to, so he didn't want to leave. So mention that, they were on board. So I'm just wondering if there's a relationship there.
Sorry.
Brother-in-law.
Oh, nice.
Brother.
Gave us a time to relax. Just to point out some bigger things in the report, federal pause has lifted from our return grants, so we did receive that money. For our manure storage that went in last year, so that one's closed out. We received our SIG reimbursement, which is a grant for the Clean Farm families, so that one's good. The only one that's officially on pause yet is the Demo Farm Network. However, they did send me the restructuring of the process to get repayment, and I asked, can I move forward with that? So I will be sending them our first quarter of this year.
Is that through NRCS? Or
Um,
is it state? or-
it's NRCS, but it's federal fund. So the managers are NRCS, USDA. So, I can send in reimbursements, but we're still on pause, so I'm a little confused myself, but we're gonna continue paperwork as they ask. We had our clean sweep last Saturday. We had 227 cars come through and we collected over 400 tires. Typically, we get about 120 cars. And I think we doubled our tires as well. I don't have numbers yet for you, just no dollar value, just those numbers.
What do you charge?
It's depending on the tire, but your typical car tire, passenger car is $4 a tire. All the way up to a tractor semi truck tire, which would be 25. And then if the rim is included, or if it's still on the rim, it's a $2 additional charge. Those prices are based on what we get charged for the company to come pick them up.
You get charged by weight, right?
Yes. Yeah. We group it by type of tire though, because we don't utilize the scale there to measure.
Right.
We just charge based
But I
on what it
mean,
is.
they come pick them up, would it be cheaper for the highway department, to take them? United Ways, and anybody with the price set out?
I can look into that. I know they're gracious enough to let us use their entire yard for the Saturday, so
Right,
I
I'm
can-
just,
I
I'm
can
familiar with that, so.
yeah. Um. There was talks about getting another dumpster for latex paint, because we had a few customers last year inquire about it. We had none this year. That extra dumpster was $2,000 quoted last year. We didn't do it. This year we didn't have any complaints or comments or issues, so we're gonna continue as is.
Can I ask about that? You're not supposed to bring latex paint.
No latex paint can be collected by Veolia that day.
They'll just refuse it and they can take it back.
They take it back, and then the staff from Veolia just insist, just mix it with sand or kitty litter, let it dry, you can dump it with your waste.
Yeah, right.
We did have some questions, well, rather heated questions or comments from people about electronics. We have never collected electronics in my time here. We let villages, cities, municipalities handle their own recycling days that way.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
gonna
we used to have
continue
a
that.
partnership with Goodwill, but I think they got out of
Okay,
that
and that was
business.
before my time.
Yep, yeah, it was, Andy was,
But all I had heard was it was a big headache. And if other municipalities are holding that task, then we're gonna continue letting it.
Do you know if all municipalities in Osaka County are supporting that?
Not all,
Okay.
not all. Town and Village of Belgium alternate, so Village is 1 year, Town is the next year. Town of Port does not have one. City of Cedarburg does, Grafton does.
Yeah, there's private sector.
And there's many vendors, so we pass out information like this to those not so happy customers that come by, who just throw this in their passenger seat, but at least we give them information on where they can go.
You put a sign. You know, it's part of the irritation because they wait in line and all of a sudden they can't get rid of it.
Wow, part of the irritation is Google and the AI. So we had people call our office even, they Google, where can I recycle my mattress? And we are one of the search engines that come up. So we've wrote back to Google about that. Even we Googled electronics and our clean sweep came up, even though it said no electronics in the text, it was still visible. So we're working on that. When I sent Tony Young in IT a question, can you just send a submission to Google to correct this? That's the
Well,
only
it's
stuff
like
I can think of.
That's one of those like good problems to have. 'Cause you want ours to be a top search when we want it to be a top
Yeah,
search.
when we actually collect the
Um,
product.
Yeah, so I guess my solution to that would be like whatever link that would bring you to cleared.
Yeah,
So, and then it's on them. If they just saw Sauk County and came, that's on them. You could say like, if you opened it up, you
Right.
would have saw
Right.
no Electra.
I think it was pretty,
And I'm sure you're saying it. I'm just wondering like how bold can we make
yeah.
it?
The only comment I will make,
Yeah.
I think for the flyer, it's in red, that it's $20 a car. No electronics in red on the bottom, but I think it's lost in so many words.
Right.
So I think just
That's
maybe a
perfect.
revamp of the flyer.
Yep.
We'll try that.
Maybe putting on a sign at the entrance saying, we don't take electronics or.
Before you get it on, no.
Yeah, the lines in the morning, probably until 9:30, they were almost up to 60.
Yep.
Every 60. So.
Put that line on 60, put that sign on 60 before you get in.
Yeah,
maybe you could put it on the highway message board. Because you have the message with the big arrow, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if,
No, that's
I know
great.
I think they can have alternating.
Yeah.
No latex paint, no electronic.
Yeah.
Correct.
The
Yeah.
guy's already taking over the world. No
Right.
electronics.
We also had a tree sale the week before. That was a hit. I think the new vendors were a positive for us. It was a little more costly, but our sales were up. The quality of trees was there. We had less complaints this year. So far, if everyone got things planted, we haven't had a call back about things that are looking like they're gonna die. No refund questions yet. So I think we're gonna stick with the vendor. Anything from the Clean Front families at the plot? I had cutworm and army worm traps.
Yeah. We were approached by UW Extension, Croc. Liz Gartman about some research that she had heard about, because we had issues with slugs last year. In the no-till corn, it actually decimated pretty much the entire plot. So she had heard about this research with, SlugNet, I think. So we're working with them just to do some research on that, and then moth, black cutworm and army worm. So we have some traps out there just to track how that's going in our area, so interesting data to it.
Yeah. Another weekend activity, Chase went to the Random Lake Conservation Fair with a booth. So we had conservation handouts, stormwater management, wildlife management handouts there. That was good and something he enjoys to do at his alma mater. Nothing too new for sanitation. I'd like to show you our post mapping quick, if I could. Otherwise, while I get there, I'll take questions if you have any. Sorry, should have stayed connected. For upcoming dates, we don't have a plot date yet. Just in all the discussion of trying to get new farmers, trying to do something different. There's actually talks of going to the LB farm. They are going to implement a Rain 360 unit. So it's an automated machine that drives down a corn row with a hose behind it that applies their leachate. Automated. So hands-free, no man needed. We're gonna showcase that probably.
Yeah, we got a lot of good feedback last year when we did our poker run, soil health poker run. Just because they really liked being able to go to different sites and see the different
Sure.
practices that other people in their community are doing. So we'll probably do that again this year.
With the demonstration farm, is most corn or do you use too?
Corn, soybean, and wheat, we rotate.
Of the demonstration farmers, we've got Matt Winker, Joe Lipinski, Anna Melikar, and Brian Carls. So you have a dairy, you have a grain. Corn, soybeans, wheat, alfalfa, cover crops are their main crops that they use. Okay. So if you go to our land and water page on our website, on our new website, we go to our septic Pouts resources tab. And scroll to the bottom, we have a Pouts map. So what the guys have been doing with their GPS equipment, instead of hand drawing where your septic system gets installed, we now have GPS location, which does do elevation as well. So when we get calls, hey, I want to build a deck on the back of my house, but I don't know where my main runs, where can you help me with that? So we're gonna go log into a known site here. This is live, open to the public. We do block out specific information. Typically, this is just location of the system with definitions of what's there in the legend here.
What year did you start? I mean, you can't
This
go-
year, this
Right.
year.
So you can't go all the way back. to
No,
all
God.
systems.
So my system was put in 17. I still have a AutoCAD drawing. This is only for new installed systems. So anything that's gonna be a replacement or new construction will be done this way.
That's very cool.
Any plan to look back?
Not at this time. On average, a year, probably 150 sanitary permits a year, and that's a little strong. 150 permits, 150 site visits at multiple site visits, because you don't build a system in a day. Say 3, 4, 5 days a system. That pretty much takes up our time with the new. So upon the time of the replacements, when mine fails in hopefully 50 years, and I have to get it replaced, then it'll be drawn. Until then, if I were to build a deck on my house and I wanted to know where my stuff was, I'd have to call the office, ask for the permit, and get paper emailed to me.
What triggered the question was just we're going back to 1700 or whatever time frame for the land records. So that you can do it on, I don't know how frequently people come in for house systems that pre-existed this year, but.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there's an opportunity to digitize that information and make it available. But.
Yeah, well, to that
Probably not
point,
that priority, but.
that information still is online. I can go there too. House maintenance program.
That's the link that was in there. I tried to use that.
Yeah, so
Didn't get it.
land and water page, you go to our septic Pouts resources, and Nick has been in this recently, so there's a chance it may not have worked for you. You click this maintenance tab, goes here. You type in your address and I'll type in mine.
River New Trail, that what we heard here with the septic system.
So I found my house with my address.
That's what you say.
Here's my report, here's what I have installed, here's when it was last serviced. Maintenance history, here's all my approved plans. So if I want to see my permit way back when. You may have to scroll the pages a little bit, but it's here. I want to find a map, I'm guessing it'll be in this one.
Is this all open to the public or is it just-
This is all-
Anybody can bring up your information.
This is all, it's all public information. The only information we have withheld is one file that's private. So there's my AutoCAD, so I at least know where my name is.
Maybe it was my iPad, I couldn't do it through my iPad. It's the kid driving.
That's what you're.
So I thought that was a really cool map that the guys have been working on. Kind of got it live last week.
Thank you.
Nice.
That's all for me. Do
All right.
you guys have anything else?
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.
Yeah, these calls.
Yeah, right.
1830.
1830s. Basically, when Bryce showed, basically they were excited out of Milwaukee by Indians. They like the place.
All right, planning of parks department. Action item number 1. And. Nine on the way. Increase revenue budget amendment for Great Lakes Sports Fisherman donation for fish passage and stream wetland floodplain and habitat restoration center.
I'll make the recommended motion.
Motion to approve by Supervisor Ross, seconded by Supervisor Shusel.
Oh, hold on. Sorry. It's gonna take me a moment, Ross.
Ross and Jimmy.
I do have a question about this. And it's not about the grant per se, but the private landowner relationships on Sucker Creek and the agreements that we have with them, or are they all in place or for the
bigger
sections?
For the bigger project. Yeah, no, they're not all in place. We're working through those agreements this year. So I think it's gonna take some time, but they've all been contacted, they've all been worked with, they've all seen preliminary plans. But you know, we'll have to get those agreements in place, which is another step, and it's gonna take some time, so. Some of them are, you know, closer to having a final agreement than others too.
So it's a risk area that if somebody chooses not to sign up, that section of the creek
For sure. Yep.
is not.
Yeah, and you know, it's always best case scenario when we're applying for the grants, you know, everything is in place, but we've received letter, you know, what the grant required was, you know. Support, and so we've gotten letters of support from every single landowner that's in the project area, so. They support it, but you know, yeah, sometimes the devil can be in detail and in the agreement and all that other stuff, and so, you know, that's a negotiation and it takes some time, and so. That's not always possible, but we do, having said that, it's kind of also the reason why we have some innate flexibility built into our project area. So that we can shift or work with landowners as needed.
But
You know, our goal will be to work with all of them, but you know, it's not always possible, or sometimes the timing is just something to work through.
But that you have letters of support from every landowner is.
Every landowner in our project area.
That's significant. Thank you.
Yeah,
More than sounds like.
Okay. Call the vote, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2, proposal and contract for professional services and design and engineering for the Lucky River Expo Nature Preserve floodplain, wetland and historic Expo restoration project via the county Junkiah W reconstruction. Motion by Supervisor Jones. Seconded by Supervisor, we got it right now.
Oh, sorry.
Kara.
You can add. Back in my baseball coach, guys.
And Any comments on this? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Number 3, Parks Division equipment purchase, 0-turn mowers for the approved 2025 and 2025 capital projects.
Make a motion.
Motion by Supervisor Shustle,
I'll second.
second by Supervisor Ross. Any comments? It's pretty self-explanatory, you know.
Just
Using Toro because.
Yeah, Toro is all of our equipment at the golf course with 2 maintenance parts, but this is also just to clarify, I mean, I think it was clear, but you know, through the state bidding, so we get kind of a low price. We've done that before. And it's usually, well, we always check, but it's usually favorable to us.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Number 4, bid and contract for repaving county managed portion of the Ozaki Interurban Trail.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Supervisor Ross. Second by Supervisor Shustle.
I'll just make one
Sure.
comment. I know there's a lot of numbers in there. I think just the summary is that, the grant is up to 999,000. But DOT, like some other grants we have, pays 80% on the total cost. So right now our bid is a little bit less than our whole grant, which is a good thing because we have some room for any change orders. But it also means they will only pay 80% on the total cost, just
We can't make money on it.
in case that wasn't clear. And so that's also to say that our 20% stays 20% of the total cost for our local share.
That's what I was gonna get at. We already kind of.
It's always gonna be 20% no matter what. In other words, we don't, just because we have leftover grant, we don't get to use it unless the total.
Right, but from an exposure. From a fiscal standpoint, that 20% is torn in budget. Anything you're saying is still projected. Will be projected savings on that 20%.
Yeah, so
The project as a whole has.
yeah, the one, a little bit of unknown, so good question. So we have 300,000 total that was budgeted. That 300,000 is also paying for design and engineering 100% because we didn't have any grant money for that. And then the 20% of construction is also coming out of 300,000. Right now it all fits. The one unknown though is the state review fees. We have an estimate, but we really can't say for sure, and those come from DOT. So they do construction management, and while we have an estimate, they don't really say anything, yeah or nay. We use their, formula, if you will, for estimating a state review fee, but it could go up, it could go down depending upon
But that swing is
complexities.
nominal. It's not
Could be
like
nominal.
a $10,000 swing, right?
No.
It's
Should be nominal.
so.
So I think, yeah, all that's position and for the change order because SMA, which is our state municipal agreement amount. So all said and done, I think we're good. And within our overall budget. Okay. It was, and just one other clarification, all the paperwork in here, DOT just requires that it's over the estimate. You have to explain why, if it's more than 10% over, and it was, our engineer just, there's a lot of nuances to this, for stuff. So there's a, explanation as to why it's usually unit costing with all the changes recently. It's really hard to pin down some of that stuff, but. And then the only other thing is DOT requires 3 bids, and if you don't get 3 bids, you have to explain why. Well, we didn't, but I think there's valid reasons that we got 2 good bids, and they're also within the SMA, which is what they look at. So if you had only 2 bids and they were significantly higher than what the grant estimate was, then there might be more discussions. Anyway, all that's just in the way of background. So,
But what's the time frame for executing this?
good question. So we won't know for absolutely sure until we can formally talk with a contractor under contract. DOT still has to approve it after you approve it. DOT has to still approve the three-party agreement. Which we expect that they will, but there are those things that they review. But we had a preliminary conversation with the contractor parking lot maintenance and so when we bid it, we gave them 3 windows. We gave them like an early window, a middle summer window and a fall window, because the goal was so that they weren't like paving a little bit, then jumping off, coming back a month later, paving a little bit, jumping off. So the idea was to try and consolidate it to like I think we consolidated to like a month and a half or something. So right now their indication is that they think they would pay in the midsummer months, so it'd be after July 4th.
Yeah.
Is when they think they're gonna, it'd be like, I think it's July, so after July 4th to mid or end of August, I think is what their window is. Whether they take that long is a whole nother thing. I'm guessing once they get on, they're gonna want to be done. They're gonna do that.
I'll find out.
So that's the window that they took, mainly because, you know, we gave a window starting in June. And their initial feeling about that would be too quick by the time the state
It'll be new.
approved all the documentation and stuff, because we probably won't get stuff back from the state until middle into May. So it would be a quick turnaround for them.
In the non-county portions of the trail,
Mhm.
any plans on those?
We applied for that grant.
We had applied for that grant, we didn't receive it. I think, you know, we'll potentially keep trying. You know, we've had those discussions with the municipalities, some are definitely interested, some are, you know, unsure. I think the you know, where the rubber hits the road is who's gonna come up with a 20% match when and if we get a grant. I mean, the first thing is we have to be able to apply and receive funds, but.
You talked in the park and open space plan about reestablishing the
Trail advisory.
trail advisory. I know that was a little dependent on staff availability.
Yeah.
And staff availability has been tough. Any thoughts on when that started?
I'm hoping this year. I don't have immediate dates or anything. I just, I know that we're dealing with a lot right now. Trail related, and we are talking to largely the municipalities who sit on the trail advisory. So we're having a lot of discussions with them already around these projects. But yeah, like the citizen representation stuff, we have to rebuild that piece of it.
Yeah, like you said, there seems to be a lot going on with this and the north-south piece and the east-west piece and the Mequon piece and all of it.
Yeah.
And like with the backbone piece, I mean, talk about this morning, it's like. Technically, they need approval from the committee. There's no committee, so you really want to have to do the commission.
Yeah, so like Mequon has it specifically written in, so generally the way it works is if the municipalities want to do something and it's also on We Energies right away, which 90% of the trail is, but there are a few sections like here in Port Washington that you know, the city bought that from We Energies a long time ago, and there is no We Energies ownership. Anyway, if it's on We Energies, generally speaking, and they have their own process, which is getting extremely long too, because of staffing at We Energies, but basically it goes to real estate, they approve it, they run it by us for approval. And by that I mean technically the county, but I've always taken that through the Trail Advisory Council, and so that's one step that, yeah, right, we haven't had. We also haven't had any large requests that have needed to go to We Energies until this Highland Road in Mequon, their trail project, but that was a pretty simple one, and I did talk to Rob about it, but I say it was simple because they weren't actually infringing in the We Energies right away at all. So it would have been a little bit different situation had they needed to do some construction in the We Energies right away, but in this case, they were connecting via the road right away, and so it was pretty, you know, nominal as far as the impact. So
Yeah, but you know how I feel. I mean, I'd like to get the committee. I'm probably about it.
Yeah, I would too. It's not something that I'm, you know, not interested in doing. It's just we're feeling a little overwhelmed.
Actually, this is great.
We're feeling a little overwhelmed, especially
For sure.
lately. But So, and with these trail projects, yes, we want to do the outreach and we want to have the advisory council, and at the same time, you know, we have the nuts and bolts of the projects that are ongoing, so. But,
All right.
yes,
Yeah, all right, I'm gonna call the question on this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 5, Gulf Forest Division equipment purchase, HVAC condenser coil for 2025 budget. Need to approve. Motion by Supervisor Joe, seconded by Supervisor Sarah. Comments, not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Under discussion items, update on funding the Parks Department capital projects and ecological division drain projects.
yeah, I do have a number of updates, stuff that we've talked about in the past, so bear with me, I will try and go quickly. And again, feel free to ask questions. But these have been a couple of things that have come up over the last few months. One, just as far as our federal grants and stuff, and there were some articles also included in the packet, but as far as our federal grants, we just received reimbursement on two of our US Forest Service grants, larger reimbursement requests on those. And they came through, so no issues. We've had a couple of state reimbursements, no issues. So as far as we're concerned, we're still doing drawdown and reimbursement. So I mentioned the Forest Service one because they require us to have the full annual reporting in and reviewed and approved prior to us getting the reimbursement. And that is the case with some of ours. So it is sometimes that you have to have all the written metrics and reporting approved before they will entertain the reimbursement request. Forest Service is one of those. Other grants, it's more of a, they want to just, so the finances is somewhat separate in that you just do, what's called ASAP drawdowns, but the automatic drawdowns, and then you do a quarterly report that reflects those drawdowns. And so that's Fish and Wildlife Service, and we've done some ASAP drawdowns with no issues at this point anyway on our US Fish and Wildlife Service grants. So and I have not heard anything. So for right now, everything seems to be moving as it should with our reimbursements on the federal grants. With just, I guess, kind of one exception, which is a unique thing, but was also kind of explained in your packet, which is AmeriCorps. The AmeriCorps program, we were contacted by AmeriCorps NCCC, which is the regional one that we work with. They essentially had their funding froze and the program closed, basically. It was a little uncertain at the time, you know, what the permanency of that is, and it still seems a little uncertain, but they have, you know, subsequently just letting us know that they wouldn't have any teams for us in spring. Then it was a follow-up to say basically they won't be awarding any teams in fall. I don't have anything official, but just hearing about it doesn't sound good. Like the program funding is basically shut down. They're starting to lay off people that run the program, etc.
Is that gonna affect, I mean, we've said we can head for the budget for next year, which process just started. Are we concerned about this kind of stuff for next year?
You know, again, with AmeriCorps, it was such a really valuable project to us. You know, their stipend and everything came from the federal grant, which was handled by the program, so AmeriCorps and NCCC, whereas we just provided lodging and food. So on the direct expense side to us, it's not an impact, but on the labor side, it's a huge impact. And so, you know, the projects that we had identified and the funding that we have set aside for that all has timelines. And so, you know, right now we're trying to manage that and doing a combination of staff and volunteers. Volunteers can sometimes, while extremely valuable, can also take a lot of time to schedule and coordinate. And, you know, usually it's got to be around an event. It's not something like we can just have volunteers show up every day at our office and give them an assignment. We're just not set up to do that, unfortunately. So we have had a really good, you know, we've been contacted by a number of organizations that they would like to volunteer. We're trying to take advantage of that, but we're not necessarily set up for like major volunteer events one after another. so yes, it's gonna affect, and we've had to, you know, some of these just, we've had to just sub in staff time, which obviously takes away from other things, so. It's just reality, I mean, we always have backup plans. On the positive side, I mean, relatively positive side. Wiscor is our local, by local, I mean, in the state of Wisconsin, they're out of La Crosse. They are a combination of, fee-based and AmeriCorps funding. It was a little bit more than I thought, so they get about half their budget roughly. I'm talking approximates here, but roughly half their budget for Wiscor comes from the AmeriCorps program. So it's a huge, still a tremendous impact to them. But the other part of their program is fee-based. So they're trying to continue with the fee-based stuff, which is largely working with partners on projects, because we, unlike AmeriCorps, we pay Wiscor to come. So they get their stipend from us. They also get lodging or lodging. We don't pay for their food.
So the labor costs would go up, that fee would go up because they need to make their budget.
Well, that's what we've been negotiating. So they contacted us. Normally, we would get a team of 6 members each. A team would be at least 6 members. Sometimes it's been bigger, but at least 6 members, 2 of which are leader and co-leader, so they're a little bit higher level training, supervision, etc. They're not going to be able to do that. So, and Wiscor has contacted us about our feeling about this, but basically they're going to hold our fee the same. So we're going to pay the same fee, or they're not going to increase it, but we're going to get less team members. So we're gonna get 4 team members. So we are going to essentially be paying more at the same time, though. Everything that their AmeriCorps funding is affecting everything to their recruiting, their training, all of that. So, you know, I was encouraged that they're gonna, you know, try and live up to all their agreements for this year. I mean, it's just, I know it's gonna be a struggle for them. But so on the positive side, we are gonna get the 2 teams that we had planned to have in June. They're just gonna be smaller. They'll be teams of 4 members each. Just one leader for both teams. So it will follow a little bit more supervision, et cetera, on us. But I think it's still, you know, nice that we're gonna have that team. We definitely have some work lined up for them. So that's kind of the federal grants, AmeriCorps piece of it. I will say, you know, one of the projects we had right away this spring was tree planting at Clay Bluffs. We had Forest Service money to do tree planting. We did manage to plant approximately 9,000 seedlings, largely through staff and a few volunteers. We got that done at Clay Bluffs, and we have a kind of a limited window to do that. So it was kind of all hands on deck, but it worked out pretty well, all things considered. So
just FYI on that, our Board of Health's Fish and Wildlife grants, they opened up for us as well, but it was based on a court order, not on an administration decision. So there's still a little, at least for us, there's a little bit of risk that
I think there potentially is with Fish and Wildlife, and actually that's another thing we always changing federal platforms and reimbursements and applications, and it's been a little bit of a headache in all of our stuff. It's been more than a little headache, but regardless, Fish and Wildlife is on an automatic drawdown, so that's one positive side, is that we will be drawing down on a fairly regular base with those grants. Whereas some of our other grants we have to incur more costs and get metrics before we can get reimbursed. Okay, next up is our talks and discussions with Sugar Maple Nature School. So we met a couple times with Sugar Maple Nature School, and we will continue to talk. But I will say that we're still not totally aligned on where we're at. Specifically, over a year ago, last winter, let's just say we had the agreement that went through this committee for snow plowing. basically. Sugar Maple has paid most of that, and the only piece that they haven't paid has been the part that we haven't invoiced for yet. So they have paid us for the actual work. However, they have not signed nor agreed to sign the agreement, which, you know, leaves us a little puzzled as to, you know, how to proceed. So obviously that's not super important going into summer. But it is an outstanding agreement that you passed that they have not signed yet. Similarly, the water testing one, which again, this is to test the well for the school specifically, and it has to do specifically with the requirements for a school. And you also passed that agreement, which along with it came project management charges in that agreement. And so they did take that up at council. They signed it, but not as passed by this committee. So we'll probably have to bring that back to you, and largely there was questions about the project management piece of it. So that's still pending, and unfortunately that one is one that's super time sensitive because we were supposed to have that testing in place and our contractor in place by the time of occupancy, and DNR gave us an extension, and so we're
So that'll be on next month, for us to approve.
probably it's gonna have to be
Or
next
discuss.
month. I'm gonna have to talk to DNR because they were already out there once to do well testing. But yeah, so I'll have to bring it back with the modifications and we can have that discussion, but
So what's the recourse? I mean, could the school be shut down? You know, by the state for not having testing on the water?
well, at some point, we're gonna have a problem with the well, yeah. At the same time, DNR's been actually remarkably understanding, and, you know, we might be able to just work, they know we're working towards the agreement. That they might, you know, school's gonna be done in June, so we're, you know. I don't know, we'll have to see.
All right.
We're working through it. The last piece of that then is, you know, also just previous invoicing for capital expense and largely the construction. So we still have an outstanding balance of around 63,000 that, you know, they have not agreed to pay at this time. And so I think they want to have continuing ongoing discussions. I think we'll do that. I try to provide, you know, as much documentation and information as I can. So yeah, it's still a little bit of a puzzle piece.
So how do you see that being reconciled? Is it, you seem to be at some stalemate?
A little bit, they said, let's keep talking. I mean, we can only, yeah, we're a little bit of a stalemate.
We're gonna have corporation council engage. I think we're at that point where, you know, there's certain things like paving that we did and agreed to, paving that we wouldn't have to do absent the school facility. You know, I think from the county's position, that's in the agreement, in communication, et cetera, that they refuse to pay. I think there's a heated pump house
Yeah.
out there. Only out there because there's a school out there.
Year-round use of the well.
Right, year-round use of the well and things of that nature. So we're at the point where we're gonna have corporation council engage with them because, you know, we're just,
And in all,
we're past the point of Andrew talking.
yeah,
Right,
and in
yeah.
all fairness, I'm trying to understand their side. I mean, with any agreement, there's gray, right? But we have a lot of backup communication that we think clarifies it and what we did, and you guys, you know, saw that some of the background also. So I'm hopeful, but yeah.
Yeah, it's time to turn up the heat
Well,
or turn off the heat on the pump house. No, I'm kidding. No, I mean, you know, this has been drawn out over months. Right, and
Well,
again,
you know, sure.
these are certainly improvements that were there to facilitate the school.
I'm sure they have budgetary constraints and realities of starting up in a new location but
Right.
that should put that up on the county if
Right.
we've gone above and beyond. that.
Right, and that's kind of what I was expecting, like, okay, we can't absorb this right now. Can we talk about payment plan and all that? That hasn't come up yet, you know, so. I'm hoping maybe that's another process like that, they'll acknowledge it and then we'll come up with.
So we'll have Rhonda review the agreement, review the communications, and I think then we'll take, you know, it's not as if we're gonna take legal action, but, you know, I think it's just a, you know,
We don't have more.
put a finer point on it and hopefully have the school understand, you know, this is where the county's at in terms of the negotiations with the planning.
In the meantime, we're not spending any more money. Thanks.
No, and you know, to that end, you know, we just did what we had to do in order to plow and keep the school open for the winter, i.e. the paving, we only paid half, and by that I mean, we just put down the binder coat and we never put down the top coat. So that cost still has to come, that cost is equal to the first cost, it's, you know, we've done about half the cost of the paving, if you will, right now. And so we're gonna have another cost to come. The top coat, I mean, we can operate a little bit without it, but at some point we have to do it because of drainage. So that's pending, but yeah, we're not proceeding with that until we, you know, come to some understanding. So yes, we won't only just what we've incurred, you know, obviously we're not snow plowing. Obviously the pump house is built already, so it's kind of a done deal there. We're not doing anything more with regard to that. So, yeah, it's, yeah, I'm hoping we can still figure out how we can get, you know, the payment plan. The last thing I'll say is just, and I know that there's limitations because, of anybody, I know the limitations of certain grants. But they do have a, you know, one that we supported, $1 million capital grant, that they're hoping to use also. And, you know, again, they have their own priorities and they said, what would your priorities be? And they said, you know, just pay where we're at. So I know that there's limitations and they
Have they
might,
received the grant or is?
oh yeah, they've received the grant, yes. They've received it. So, but there might be limitations on what they can use it for, and I don't know all the details of that grant.
So once.
Corporate council get involved.
And once things are clarified, I'm confident we'll have a great partnership moving forward. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess on another note, another thing that's been asked a lot, and I don't know, I just think I finally got updates. I met with Restoring Land, formerly that was actually Washington Land Trust. And we did talk about a number of things, but we did talk about the ARPA funds that were received, that they are spent out. The ARPA funds were spent out. They were like the county's ARPA funds, they had a deadline and they were spent out.
I'm confused. So when you say the ARPA funds, the ARPA funds that the governor.
Grant from the state,
Granted, so that
they were
spent by the governor or they were spent by?
no, they were received by,
Restoring Lands?
they were received by Restoring Lands and used.
Oh, it's very interesting.
So
'Cause
on that note
we
though,
had played under the proposition that money had not yet been transferred.
yeah, they did receive them. And they did use them, and that was the negotiation. And if you remember several months back, you know, I had talked to the DNR and they hadn't been allocated yet, but at some point they were. And they agreed upon a project. You know, again, just from Restoring Land standpoint, so they did say, you know, they agreed with the state that those funds were gonna be used for something else, and that the private funds that the land trust raised ultimately went for, you know, the slightly less than half of the purchase, right? The county had funding in place for slightly more than half of the 5 million, and the land trust did the balance. With their private fundraising, and so they
They got
see that
reimbursed, but they got reimbursed for that expenditure by the governor's ARPA funds.
they basically said that grant was, you know, ultimately used for a different project.
Well, okay, some people might.
Thought there was a big
I,
Governor Evers, they were saying about this land.
there was a press event. They well, they've used it. They did use the bulk of those funds within Ozaki County.
I guess cutting to the chase, have we been made whole on that? 'Cause I know
Yeah,
we fronted under the assumption that governors aren't.
Yeah, no,
Whatever.
we were made whole at the time of acquisition. We didn't carry anything other than what our commitment was, which was the 200,000. So we were made whole right away, and Land Trust is saying, yep, Restoring Lands. You know, we had our private funds in place and we used those, and you know, you guys were all made whole and the acquisition happened, so.
That's my biggest.
Yeah, and so the grant is a separate thing because ultimately that was a grant between the state and Restoring Lands.
Yeah. But we've been made whole.
Yeah, we're made whole.
So where do you, I mean, given the debate or discussion that we've had here, trying to engage leadership and talk, where do you see this going? Is there some approach you envision in which Restoring Lands can play a role with the county in improving that property?
I hope so. I don't have a specific dollar, I've talked about some of our needs for matching funds. And so that was discussed, going forward. So, we have a good amount of funding in place, but we still have some match needs. And so I did talk about that. So
no.
Well, nothing concrete that I can report today.
So I think going back several sessions, at least I've asked for the county leadership to get involved with leadership at Restoring Lands to try and negotiate this. We held off because we thought the funding was still under negotiation with between the governor and Restoring Lands. It turns out that maybe we've missed that opportunity to engage in that discussion while the funds are still allocatable because they've already been spent on another project.
Well, I did. I talked to both the DNR, who was in charge of coming up with the project planning, but at the end of the day, it was a grant between the Land Trust and DNR.
Yeah, no, I understand. None of this is direct with you.
No, I know.
Question I have, I guess more directly, did we miscommunicate or did the Land Trust or Restore, whatever their name is right now, I apologize. Did they operate not in good faith with any of this? I mean, we put a lot out there.
I'm gonna say it's neither. I'm gonna just, I know that's, it.
Cause
They were aware of, our desires, their feelings that. We were made whole. They did bring all the private donations and that effort to the closing of the property. The separate standing thing was this other grant, which they pursued and received, but.
How did the wording of that grant go?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
How did the wording of that grant go that they received?
I have no idea because we weren't party to it. I just told the DNR, our interest in, working with all three parties. And so I don't know, that grant was between Restoring Lands and the state. So
My frustration, I think the committee probably as a whole is frustrated, but my frustration was we signed away the easement,
yes,
which was our leverage.
Yeah.
Based on the understanding, at least my understanding, that they were going to work with us for improvements of that property.
Yeah.
And
That's where I was getting at.
it may still come about. I'm not saying that there was no, it was just a discussion about what happened to those funds.
But what I can't wrap my head around is that they got that grant, that ARPA money, that was supposed to be for that land. Plus they had all this other money from private donations for that land. And it exceeded the amount of money that they needed to purchase that property, right? Am I wrong in that?
No.
So what,
On myself.
so did they take the private money that the people had given for Blade Gloves and put it someplace else?
No, that was used and brought to closing. So that was used for the property as discussed. It was the grant that was retooled.
But the grant was, like they said, they trumpeted the fact that Evers was giving us $3.2 million to make up the difference. That we would have gotten from Knowles Nelson, right? You know, and
Yeah.
it was gonna be for this property. I guess that's my frustration. And
Yeah, I
I
know.
don't think I mean, we, the county, didn't have any standing in that discussion, right? I think that's the
No,
bottom line, right? But I do think that we made efforts to, in good faith, as a good partner in that, and we wouldn't have that county park now if it wasn't for Zaki Washington Land Trust.
right,
Now restoring land, so we have to, start with that as a basis.
Yeah.
But something's happened since then where I don't feel this committee of the county has gotten full information consistent with the early discussions, and it's frustrating. So I guess, and it's, I think
No,
it's beyond, I don't think it's a you thing.
No,
I
I
think it's
mean,
a county thing, if we have any standing to go forward to them, and if the leadership of the county wants to go forward to have these discussions, I think that's where it sits. It's outside, and we don't want to prejudice your relationship with them. There's
Yeah.
these
Right.
discussions that are going on. I get all of that.
Yeah.
But we have to understand a little bit more about how this is moving.
And the frustration, obviously, it's not with you, it's with
Yeah.
developing lands and from talking to other board members, I mean, there's gonna be some bad ill will that they're creating with the county board, and it's not gonna be good.
and, yeah, and I mean, I did point that out, and again, like I said, there wasn't a no, it's just, this is what we did with the funds, or, so. I'm hoping going forward that they heard what I said about, we need local match to complete the restoration. At the, the very least, here's kind of some information from us where we could use some support, and I'm hoping that was, for.
Jason, where do you see this going between you and the chairman?
Well, I think much like it's news to the committee, news to me.
Yeah, I didn't know until we met one.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think that I'll have to follow up with Andrew and better understand those conversations, and then we can talk about the strategy.
Sense of the committee, we feel like we've been let down the primrose path. And
As do I.
Yeah.
Maybe we can create a primrose path at the.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's certainly interesting to hear that the governor's funds were not used to purchase the park. Yeah, well, yeah, probably some great investigative journalism that could occur right there.
no, I hear you.
And, look, they're a long-term partner. There's probably information that we're not fully understanding as a committee, and let's seek to understand before we are understood, but, we have a position.
Yeah, and I think to Rob's point, which is the most poignant point, is that I think there are people who sit in the county board, who will, this will definitely be a point of contention for anything going forward, right? Yeah,
Timelines.
just politically.
Since this whole thing started. I remember the last
14.
meeting when my predecessor was. Actually, that's what bothering me about it, man. It was buried in the next.
Yeah,
week,
we're right up there with
so
the
I know
one we
exactly.
had yesterday.
It's one of the reasons I'm on the committee, because actually. From a timeline standpoint, I'm very aware that it was going on for 4 years. Anyway,
I hear the frustration. And I can talk to Tom about coming into, what, one thing that was said again, just, to Supervisor Ross's point. They did have the money at closing, they did have it timely, they did have the private donations, they did put in a significant amount of their own resources beyond just the closing costs for, you know, legal, whatever. So there was a true partnership. Certainly the grant piece is complicated. All right.
I just, not to extend it too much further, but I think if Tom came in here, sat at the table and he heard our frustrations that may not build the bridges that we want to build with them in the future. So it might be better at the county leadership, maybe Rob, you
Yeah.
sit down with the chair and with Tom and Jason and
Yeah.
have a dialogue.
And understand.
Yeah, private dialogue.
Okay, well, moving on just in the way of updates, capital stuff, thank you, both furnaces, at HH Peters and the Wabadonia caretaker have been installed and are functional, so that's good. Even though we're going into summer, it's still a good thing. So thank you on that. We have been extremely busy on engineering and design projects, so we are nearing. Not quite there yet, but we're nearing 60% plans for the restoration out at Clay Bluff Cedar Gorge, so. The big part of that would be kind of the wetland restoration piece and working with our design consultant on that, and we're nearing 60% plans. And we do have funding in place for that first phase and the engineering and design. We're nearing 60% plans for phase 2 of our Middle Springs Creek restoration, so that's ongoing. We're hoping to meet with the consultant about that a little further next week. And then lastly, we're not quite there yet, also on 60% plans for our Vermont restoration, so wetland restoration. We just met with the consultant yesterday, and they're gonna be tightening up plans, and then we'll be doing some more outreach and obviously working through permitting on all of those pieces. So we have a lot of things that will, you know, start triggering construction, hopefully, with design and engineering, so. On the construction side of things, one other, you know, grant funded project is Sucker Creek. So also along with the bigger restoration, if you will, of the creek, you know, going into that, we also were addressing several culverts. And one of those culverts we are constructing right now. Actually, it should be done by the end of this week with our highway department on the far north end of Sucker Creek. So that's going in, and that project's going really well. So highway will have that installed this week. Switching gears slightly, but we talked a little bit about the repaving of the trail with the approval today. We also held a public informational meeting for the extension of the Ozaki Interim Trail along State Highway 60. So we had good attendance. That was on May 1st. You know, there was a lot of stuff brought up at that meeting that we will document and work in as part of our design and engineering plans. So that informational meeting and subsequent follow-ups, we did also, you know, present that information. We were at the Bike Expo in West Dallas, where we get a good reception. So we had a booth there and talked about the repaving and the State Highway 60 extension of the interim trail, and presented that information at the Bike Expo, which was the 10th through the 13th. We also held 2 public informational meetings for our farmland preservation plan. And we did get some attendance, not huge, but you know, overall the participants were you know, really thankful. So we did that. We also have been working or collecting survey data. We did a kind of our own survey that we put online. We have about 200 responses to that survey, which I think is phenomenal. So we'll start digging into that data soon. We just closed the survey the other day, so just starting to tally that information from the survey. And we started meeting with the towns. I've met with the town of Belgium and the town of Fredonia now, not at just with their chairman, to have some preliminary discussions about farmland preservation in their towns, and we'll continue to have those meetings with the town, cities, villages as we go around. Let's see, we are sorry, I'll be presenting to the Wisconsin Shipwreck Coast National Marine Sanctuary Council, coming up at their end of May meeting. I think it's on the 30th, just talking about some of the things going on here in Ozaki County and the connections we're making for the sanctuary. So I think that'll be super positive. And just in the way of parks items, I just wanted to there was actually a really nice email that we received from a resident, but we've been working hard on kind of they're not done yet, but a good chunk of work on the Mequon Trail system at Mequon Park. And the staff placed 2 of the bridges that were under our Natural Resource Foundation grant. So we got a real nice compliment about that, and it's getting there. It's not 100% done, but we got that, and I'm seeing just having been out there myself quite a bit, it's getting really good use. So a lot of people are starting to use that new trail system, and then just on the maintenance side of things, we're working on Lions Den. That's always a huge chore to wood chip all the trails, and we're going through that process now. And all the bathrooms are open for the season, so we go through water testing and everything else. So we open up the bathrooms for the season, and so we're going to just get a post out about that too, because we start getting more usage in the parks when that occurs. So those things, just from the maintenance side of things are moving along, and staff's doing a lot of really good work. So
Anybody else have any questions?
Just one point, there's some articles in your package about the Knowles Nelson program. Jason sent me an email a couple weeks ago about a county that had sent a resolution off to the state supporting the Knowles Nelson 2 years ago, and it was in the same boat again. I think the reason he sent it to me was because I pushed on the resolution board. I haven't been as anxious about that this time. Not that I don't support it, I do support it. I just don't know if it makes a lot of difference, but I think the natural resources thing could be an avenue to say, yes, we want to put together a resolution model, on what we did before or the other counties resolution. And forward it up to the state legislature and
I love that idea. What's the timeline? What do you need to?
I could bring it in June. I mean, they don't finalize anything till July.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. I'll bring it in June.
Yeah, I think that should be enough time for the legislature to at least have it in hand for our representatives.
If I find out
Before they have to select the money for the action.
Yeah, strongly support that. I appreciate that.
if I find anything else different about the timing, I'll communicate it with Rob. It's just as far as when things are going to be taken up, but yeah. Otherwise, I'll plan to bring it in June.
And if you want another perspective on it as you're developing it, I'll be.
Great. Yeah, definitely. I'll look at what we did last time.
I just did the one that came from Green County or
Which is
Green.
I
Maybe.
Yeah.
Got it.
I would move to whatever.
Motion by Supervisor Ross, second by Supervisor Schuster.